It's now a non-state but extremely powerful military force, probably of about 20 to 25,000 regular fighters, very well trained, and a reserve force of a similar number, perhaps 20 to 30,000 fighters. Since 2006, when they last fought Israel and really brought Israel advance in southern Lebanon to a standstill, they've multiplied their stocks in their missile arsenal, Hezbollah have, and they're now believed to have perhaps as many as 100,000 missile and rockets, many of which have been retrofitted in Lebanon, supplied by Iran, retrofitted so that they are precision missiles with a reach that could conceivably hit Tel Aviv.
I mean, there was as much that was interesting about this speech that wasn't said as what was said. For a start, I mean, if we can take some crumb of comfort, there wasn't a declaration of all-out war on Israel.
There wasn't a declaration of all-out war. I think the main driver of the speech was trying to avoid direct war with Israel at this moment between Israel and Hezbollah, and possibly for Hezbollah to avoid direct confrontation with the United States as well, but while keeping up a strategy that could exact toll from Israel. There's a kind of unprecedented level of fighting going on along the border between Lebanon and Israel at the moment, really not of a level seen since 2006. So there is a lot of shelling and rocket strikes by each side, but in a fairly defined strip of territory. And the targeting so far has been military posts and points and units of each side. So there is a sort of controlled, escalated conflict going on at the moment. And Nasrallah's speech was very much in step with that conflict. Not a declaration of all-out war or massive escalation, but he warned of trigger points that could lead to further escalation.
We don't hear from Nasrallah that much, do we?
No, and even yesterday, it wasn't a public speech. It was a televised live broadcast. But he has remained silent, actually, until yesterday, since the October the 7th attack by Hamas on Israel. And so these words were very widely waited for and listened to by people not just in the region, but around the world, because Hezbollah are a very, very potent force, far more potent than Hamas. And if he was to have declared outright war against Israel, then that would have been the nightmare of a second front of precision missiles raining down on Israel, of Lebanon being sucked into war, and all the things that could lead to an overspill and a much wider conflagration.
Just break this down for us, Anthony, because it is incredibly confusing. Just talk to us about Hezbollah's role in the region, its relationship with Hamas.
Okay, so Hezbollah's got a really pivotal role. It was kind of founded in Lebanon in the 80s during the chaos of the Lebanese civil war. Originally, and still, it has a Shia Muslim base, although it does also have appeal to others of Lebanon's communities, including some Christians who are very supportive of it. But essentially, it's now a non-state but extremely powerful military force, probably of about 20 to 25,000 regular fighters, very well trained, and a reserve force of a similar number, perhaps 20 to 30,000 fighters. Since 2006, when they last fought Israel and really brought Israel advance in southern Lebanon to a standstill, they've multiplied their stocks in their missile arsenal, Hezbollah have, and they're now believed to have perhaps as many as 100,000 missile and rockets, many of which have been retrofitted in Lebanon, supplied by Iran, retrofitted so that they are precision missiles with a reach that could conceivably hit Tel Aviv. So a very significant hybrid force. They're also one of the central components of a grouping called the Axis of Resistance. The Axis of Resistance is Iranian-led and essentially anti-Western and anti-Israeli. It has a number of state actors such as Iran and Syria in it, but also non-state actors like Hezbollah, like the Houthi in Yemen, and like various militant groups in Iraq and in Syria. So Hezbollah play a central role in this, which is why Nasrallah's words were so important. Some people have said they were, diplomatic in some way. They weren't. He did warn of escalation, and he warned very clearly of the various trigger points that could lead to that. He also said that American bases could expect further attacks in Iraq. But the things he was really warning of was, he said, we will watch what happens in Gaza and calibrate our response accordingly. I think it's clear that if Hezbollah see Hamas will be defeated to fight decisively in Gaza, then they're very likely to escalate along the front, along the border between Lebanon and Israel. If they see Palestinian population being evicted or dispossessed in some way from Gaza, they would also escalate. So there were a series of kind of triggers which he laid out during that speech.
And talk to us about the role the US plays there as well, because there were direct threats, weren't there, made by Nasrallah towards the US if they feel that this conflict goes too far?
Well, he repeatedly said the United States is trying to threaten us, meaning Hezbollah, with their warships. And we say very clearly that if you carry on threatening us, we're not afraid of your warships. We have means by which we could surprise those warships too. Now, remember, in 2006, Hezbollah actually hit an Israeli warship 10 miles off the coast of Lebanon with one of their anti-ship missiles. They have a lot more of those missiles now. Excuse me. He also harked back to 1983, which was when the Americans had suffered a devastating strike, suicide attack, vehicle-borne, on their Marine base in Lebanon, which caused them to pull out of Lebanon. They lost 250 Marines. And Nasrallah said, remember that strike. Well, the people who did that are still here. Their children are still here, and their grandchildren are here.
How much of this is posturing? I know it's difficult to know from Hezbollah because they can't just stand back and let this continue. They have to put out the threats. I'm just wondering how realistic it is that they will act upon them.
Well, there are reasons not to escalate the war too. I mean, Lebanon's still in the grip of an economic crisis. Lebanese do not want another ravaging war. They've suffered wars repeatedly over the last 50 years. And so a lot of Lebanese do not want war with Israel now at all. But at the same time, you can't underestimate the impact of events in Gaza throughout the whole world, but particularly in this region. And so there aren't as many levers of control in Lebanon at the moment politically that might limit Hezbollah in some way. It's both sides. These have reasons not to go to war with each other and to go to war with each other. Israel doesn't want a second front. It doesn't want rockets raining down on Tel Aviv. Hezbollah doesn't want to lose its popularity in Lebanon and to see the country destroyed here. But at the same time, both sides are really focused on events in Gaza, and in this febrile environment, further war could indeed happen.
Anthony, it's always good to speak to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
That's Anthony Loyd, the Times special correspondent, speaking to us live from Beirut.